tonight we're very excited about this professional development speaker. Nick Davis is the Chief Platform Officer for the Mid-Ohio Food Collective. He also served as the Faculty Chair of Corporate Innovation at Singularity University, and he's a partner at Factor Future LLC, as well as a board member of Forbes Ignite. He is the number one bestseller of Future Ready, a Changemaker's Guide to the Exponential Revolution. And he has done some really incredible things in his career that we're excited to hear him share on tonight. We're also very, very excited to hear him speak about the future, what it means for all of us in terms of our personal and our professional lives. So if you would please give a warm welcome to Nick Davis. We go through our leaving comments on the Zoom. Please use the chat feature so that we can see those come across and answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
We use a joking method that AV is difficult, AI is easy. We're going to test that here tonight. So, do I need this number? Excited to share the evening with you for those of you in person and those of you online. One more housekeeping. I can talk quickly, so you'll see as I go through this, it'll be kind of punchy and fast. Visually speaking, you're going to be considered here. But feel free to stop me at any given point. We can talk about it and have a discussion if you so choose. There will be time at the end for us to be able to go through it. Last kind of context, little copy. So these things are going to feel a little bit uncomfortable for people who have seen this talk before. The future could be a little scary. So we're going to have some conversations that are things that are changing in real time for all of us. And so as we work through it, I'll hopefully bring some humor and some lightness to it. But if you're at the end of this, like, what the hell am I going to go study going forward? I do that thing back off. Right, so be prepared. This might be a little fun, a little scary. Sound good? Okay. So the future is here. So as Brandon said, that's the theory of making things easy and hard. Of course.
Hold it, Steve. You might be standing in the way.
Yeah.
Here, I'll move closer.
Flat progression. All through the hands. Legit. I'm prepared to sing if necessary. I swear we tested all of those already.
We did.
While you're figuring that out, I'm hearing from someone online that they can barely hear, so they might be.
And the microphone is back. Okay. You can set that up. I probably listen. I'm not being able to progress it, so maybe if you do it for me.
Yep.
Okay. And we're back to the microphone. How about now for online? If anybody can just put in the chat, if you can hear me better now, we will see how we can do it. Okay, so as Brandon said, this is my book. You can buy it in all available stores, online, Audible, whatever you're wanting. If you look for a paperweight, fun gift for a family member, to wreck a fish, whatever it may be. Good, you can see that. That's there. A lot of the things that we'll talk about today are case studies you can buy in the book. Happy to get it out. Next slide. Awesome. So hopefully we're starting to kind of get this experience, right? So technology is changing the world around us. Right? So we're starting to hit a point now where I think about half the news articles that we see, you're hearing things around AI, around drones, around 3D printing, around the news right now being GPT-4. I'll have a little bit on that here in a minute. We're really looking at a world where technology is ever present. And so just for some comments here, this is lab-grown beef. Anyone ever had fake synthetic lab-grown beef? The vegan in the room says yes. When I ask that question in California, your hand goes up. When I ask it in Ohio, it's usually hard and fast. If you look here, this is actually the first 3D printed tool in space. This was our teams at NASA that worked on that. So they're one of our groups with Lowe's. We put that 3D printer up on the International Space Station. 3D printed a rich. So kind of cool stuff like that. So next one for us. Given that this is a young professionals talk, we're going to talk a little bit about the uncomfortable part of automation, robotic process automation, AI, machine learning, deep learning. The robots are taking over. We can have that fun Terminator conversation if you'd like to have it. But we'll just talk a little bit about the lightness of the changing conditions for AI as well. Right? Okay, next one. Help us play some sound for us. Look at that for me. This was about 4 days ago.
Behind ChatGPT, which came on the scene just 4 months ago, out with its latest innovation, GPT-4.
It can summarize articles, craft jokes, and even decipher images.
For example, it can tell us that if the strings in this image were cut, the balloons would fly away.
After scanning a picture of what's in your cupboard or fridge, it can serve up options for a recipe.
The previous version of ChatGPT had about a 10% chance of passing the bar exam for lawyers. This new version that's being introduced today has about a 90% chance of passing the bar.
You hear that? Hear that? In 4 months, this thing went from being born to acing the bar exam. What can your dumbass 4-month-old do?
I'm going to have this kind of interlaced throughout, but it is no short order to say this is going to change the way we exist in the world. And I'll go a little bit deeper in that. But this particular technology should frighten you a little bit. It is going to go very, very quickly. It's open, it's free. If you want to try it, go online, openai.com. Great free technology. Next point.
Or word, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, which
So changes on the horizon, right? So I'll give us a little bit of context here. So Africa's population will top East Asia for the first time by 2030. There'll be more grandparents than grandchildren. Half the world's population wealth belongs to women. And ultimately, the largest economy will be China. And so we see massive changes happening in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years. I'll try to be careful about what time horizon I'm pointing towards as we have some of these conversations, but suffice it to say, this is a world that will look very, very differently. This picture here, you can see in the background, looks like some futuristic city that is utopia. That's actually Saudi Arabia's plan for one of their cities to be by 2030. So it's not big, they're building that now, right? So those are the things that you can see would be a little more. Next one. Speed of COVID, right? So I think we've all seen obviously massive disruption as we think about technology adoption over the last few years. But for those of us in the technology world, what we're basically saying is 10 years of progress happening in about 1.5 years. So we are seeing massive, massive changes with adoption. I mean, here, we've got awful cameras and all kinds of fun stuff going on, right? We're all used to using Zoom, and we are moving much faster into using technology like this. Next one forward. Who's heard of the metaverse? Hands? Anybody got a VR headset at home playing with? Fun?
Yeah.
I'm not exactly bullish on this one. I think we're still probably a little ways away. For me, augmented reality is a bigger opportunity versus virtual reality, which for those of you that don't know, so a mixed reality or a digital overlay that comes through the glasses that we wear, I think will be an ultimate game changer. And we will see probably in the next 5 years or so, that will take over the use of a phone. You won't carry these things around anymore. It will be things that are either a lens that you put on your eye or glasses that you wear, and it will change the way we learn, interact, view the world, get information. Pretty crazy stuff. But for me, this one, a little hokey still. I'm sure Zuckerberg would not love me saying that, given the billions he's poured into it, but moving along in a pretty interesting way. Next. So exponentials. Oh, I can't control this.
Hey, nice.
So Gordon Moore, so he was from Intel, came up with this notion of exponential change, right? So transistors on chips double every 2 years. So things are getting faster and faster and faster, right? I think we're all feeling that reality. Our iPhones are basically more powerful than what it took to put rockets in the Mars or under the moon. And he was the one who first articulated a lot of that work. This is Ray Kurzweil, who's the co-founder of Singularity, where I work. He does a lot of work around singularity. So when will a machine have the collective intelligence of the entire human species? Right now, we're about squirrel or bunny land. By the end of this century, by the end of this decade, probably 2028, we'll see computers as smart as a person. By mid-2035, one machine, a supercomputer, will be essentially smarter than the entire human species, which, we'll talk a little bit about the implications and things like that. So going pretty quickly. Here's all the latest supercomputers over time that you see here from 1900 all the way to 2025. Right now, the Tesla Dojo, fastest computer in the world, the one going very, very quickly. Right, so we're seeing an exponential curve that goes through the growth of these technologies. So let me make this a little more real quick. So here you see on the axis here, 0 to 16. And you see from 2012 to 2022, this is the growth in computing power over a decade. Crazy fast, right? Yeah. Who wants to predict what this would be from 2023 basically to 2033? Anybody have a best guess of what it would be in the next 10 years?
50.
100? Yeah. So here. So that curve that you just saw is indistinguishable at this notion. So this is from a faculty member that I work with. His name is Dr. Todd Lipson. He's the head of AI at Columbia. Teaching a lot about just the amount of growth that we're going to see in the next 10 years and the implications. It is almost, well, honestly, our brains can't quite fathom it. Crazy change in speed and the amount of things that we'll be able to do with it. Beyond that, the computing power just shows you here the amount of data that we're going to be digesting, the amount of data we'll be generating around the world. Crazy amounts of data for us to be able to leverage and utilize. And what that means for us ultimately is data is the most valuable resource on the planet. It is now past oil. It is a crazy amount of data that we're able to generate, use, target for ads, all kinds of fun stuff. Okay, so a little exercise for us. So if I do 30 steps linear, I would be basically in the kitchen behind us. Do we agree? Mm-hmm. So what if I do 30 exponential steps? How far do I go? Any guesses? How far? To the roof.
How about down the highway?
Down the highway. So here's the fun part for our initial list is so hard. 26 times around the earth. And the vast majority of that growth is at the end. And so when you think about a thing like artificial intelligence, where, again, we're seeing huge monumental lifts and leaps every 6 months or so, as this starts to break, the AI starts to write itself, you're going to see situations where that growth rate becomes almost unimaginable for us, right? So very quickly, this will grow itself. So I've seen the speed of change that it is today. If I could go back 10 years, I might have done things differently, right? So that's the head of day group. Huge disruption in retail, seeing that basically in every major industry, tons and tons of change, and how we navigate that as leaders is really difficult. So for us, what we try to understand from an academic standpoint is as things are accelerating, this is the disruptive curve, the point where it's either an opportunity or to be disruptive, right? So think teller may lose their job because the robot can do all the things, or the retail person in the grocery store, you notice how more and more of the lines are being automated, fewer cashiers, things like that are happening. Who's for CRISPR-Cas9? I got one in the back. 2, CRISPR, okay? So I get that question all the time. What is the scariest technology that's out there? For me, AI is pretty scary. For mine, though, this is the one. So for about 20 years now, we've been working on mapping the human genome, so our genetics. With CRISPR, we had the breakthrough to be very cheaply edit our genome, right? So when we think about the exponential curve I talked about before, here's Moore's law, and this is the price performance associated with mapping genetics, and then ultimately editing them. It is so cheap that by 2030 or so, it'll cost about a penny to map our genome. Very cheap. A lot of applications from that from a health perspective. You can buy these kits, actually just use them in your garage, which means you could, essentially, using RNA, you can manipulate your own genome off of a toolkit that you get off the web. Right? So whether it's AI or quantum, those are very expensive technologies. This is one that is DIY. Want to make yourself taller, stronger, different hair color, whatever, you can pretty much do that out of your own. So here's a fact I know we're out of China. So when we think about editing a genome like a stem cell, very great implications for possible health concerns. But if you have that done, you can't pass that trait on to your children. Right? It's not preventable. But if you do an edit to the germline, what that basically means, and we have a baby in the room to prove it, you can pass that as a trait on to your children. And so for the first time that we are aware of in human history, this faculty member in China actually did do an edit to 2 twin girls that made them absolutely resistant to HIV. So cut a little piece in their genome, and now they forever and always will be, resistant to HIV. MIT did a study for the same genetic change. And what they found was that in mice, at least, that if you change that particular order of the genome, it actually changes your ability to have memory significantly. So an outcome of this was, yes, they'll never get HIV, but quite literally those 2 twin girls in China right now are probably the smartest animals on this planet. They are forever able to pass that over to their kids' kids, and beyond, right? So we are able to do this today. We're choosing not to ethically, but think about genetics arms race, right? What did we see in the Cold War? We used weapons. Well, think about if I can tell you taller, stronger, smarter, faster, and the only reason we're not doing it is ethics. It's pretty crazy. Okay, so I want an honest moment with everybody in the room. Have you ever spit your gun out? Put it under a desk? A lot of me, and they all got it. So this artist in New York went around subways, pulled gum off of chairs and off of benches, took the gum home, mapped the people's genome who spit it out with their saliva, 3D printed their face and hung it in her gallery without their permission. Violation of privacy? Something that should give you chills.
Yeah.
Right? Well, scary. This was 8 years ago. So, and this scenario 8 years ago, that is horses and buggies for technology. The things we can do now are pretty crazy. Anybody follow any pets online? Instagram, TikTok? Yeah, you do. I mean, you don't keep hands every time. But you think about it, you generate millions and millions of followers. What happens when that pet who lives an average of 8, 10, 12 years passes away, but now you've got all this content? They're actually cloning their animal. And then just keeping the same account going. Right? So we're just going to keep it flow. Pretty great. Okay, so all the different technologies for the most part that are starting to impact us as a species, none of them live in a silo. They're all interacting with each other. So it's AI, quantum, CRISPR, 3D printing, and they're all impactful. What that means for us as a society, huge societal trends, right? So without being totally just crazy techie guy, this child will live forever. We are very, very close to solving for aging now.
What?
So the idea that like I have young kids, and we have young kids in the room, 180, 200 years old, is at this point going to be an option. Most likely it'll be just forever. Right there, I've seen some pretty interesting info on Princeton. I've talked to a couple of this faculty over the last few years. What do you do for retirement? Yeah. And you can stay the same age. You can just say, I want to stay 35 and just stay there. And absolutely scientifically possible. The implications for that are great. Speed, agility, responsiveness, and the key to success. So for me, I teach this one a lot. This is from John Boyd. He was a fighter pilot in the 80s at the Top Gun School. Talked a lot about tactical advantage, right? So how do we observe the world around us? How do we orientate ourselves to it? How do we make a decision with that information? And how do we take action against it? He was famous for never losing a dogfight because he applied this model with his fighter pilots. So Harvard teaches this now at the business school. We use a lot of this work whenever we think about how do we think about the future around us and then take actions against it to be able to move forward quickly. So this is one that we use a lot for our work, and it helps us navigate for things like this, like blockchain or crypto. What is it disruptive? What is it not? How do we navigate that going forward? Okay, leadership standpoint. Okay, so for me, the tools, frameworks, all kinds of things that are done and taught in these areas. But ultimately, how we think about this as leaders is the most important aspect of how we're going to be successful in the future. That our polling tells us that it is, us a person that you'll see as the one who's ultimately successful. So we teach what we call the kind of the S curves of leadership, right? So WAVE is the framework that we use because, like all academics, we have to get some acronyms and get a framework because that's how we do it. And in this case, if your future makers run enough to provide the wave, you have to also be the wave. So create the opportunity for disruption or opportunity, and then how you yourself surf that wave to be successful, right? So, so what do you do for a living? Anybody?
Instructional designer.
Instructional designer. Okay, so L&D, OD, love it. Any disruption going on in your business right now?
Constantly.
So thinking about the implications of L&D and OD and how we think about the future of trading and augmented reality and how do we get more people through a program. You're going to want to use a lot who's creating that wave of disruption and learning versus reacting to it. That way you can stay ahead of the curve your career, right? And meet the same curve. So waves of wonder, adapt, value, and evolve. I'll talk about each of these here pretty quickly. So build a future that inspires wonder. For me, what I'll typically do is we'll talk about kind of mapping about 5 years out. We have enough data to say we accurately can predict what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years. Beyond that, I mean, COVID taught us we're not really good. But 2030, kind of anyone's guess. At this point, I mean, the food bank, I'm like, we may have famine, we may have drought, we may have a lot of environmental issues. We could even have a world war at this point. There's a lot that goes on around that. But how do we think about alternate future? If this happens, we do this. If another global plague breaks out, how does the food bank respond? We do this. When you get 20, 25 years out, you're really saying to yourself, there's no real way to predict what's going to happen. What is the world we want to build? So how do we think about putting our energy, our resources, our time to a more aspirational vision of the future? Things like wide adoption of VR and quantum and second life and figure that. So create a shared vision for it. So I won't go through this the whole time, but a story that I'll tell often is I was working with a very large insurance company here in town. And we had the CTO, the CIO, and a lot of the tech leadership were in the room with us. And we were out at NASA in Silicon Valley. And we had one of our faculty members on stage who teaches quantum computers. And we were having a discussion around robo-advisors. So this is the notion that you would call into this insurance company. The person that picks up the phone and answers your investment questions is not a human, it's an AI. But you can't tell the difference, right? And now with ChatGPT, it's very real. And we had a discussion. What year do you think that will happen? Right? Everybody in the room agreed it will happen. But when? 5 years, 7 years, or 3 years too late? That notion of everyone in the room not agreeing is what causes us problems. We have to have a shared vision for where we're going, and then ultimately a shared vision for where we're going next. All right? So autonomous cars, will they happen? Raise your hand, yes or no? Yes. So, yeah, every hand went up. When I asked that question 5 years ago, half the room. When I asked it 10 years ago, maybe a couple people. So we all agree that it will happen. When? What year will it be? Just every car drives itself. 2025. 2025.
That's about 20.
2030. 2030.
40.
What year?
2035.
See, we don't agree on when, right? So how would you say we're going to change traffic laws? We're going to change how we invest. We're going to change how we build cars if none of us agree on when. So creating that shared vision is a huge piece of this. This is some work that I did with Embraer a few years ago. We were doing the same thing. So like envision that world 20 years out and then build today to be able to achieve it. Here's one. Who can tell me what this is? What does this robot do? Any guesses? You've seen it before. So then, again, now that this baby in the room. This is a baby carriage. So we built this for a company, again at NASA, thinking through what would an automated stroller walking beside you function as, 20 to 25 years from now, right? Sketching that. So things like this that we help vision that future, and we can all agree on it and move forward. So the future will be what we make it. It's a little bit of a cautionary tale that I often tell people. Hungry but lazy, stay in bed. I don't want to walk around, bring my soda. Convenience at every matter. So the venture capitalist in me is like, if you can make people lazier invest in it. You make a lot of money. Uber, Facebook. I want to leave. I want to sit on my couch and have my Doritos brought right to you. Right? That is not, I think, who we all aspire to be as a species, but is the reality of where we are. So I'll often say, be careful what you're building because the implications are pretty deep. But that developed new perspectives. So this is called the unlimited trapeze. This is from a faculty member of ours named Mark Bonchak. But I think it's a pretty interesting one to consider. So whenever you're trying to make a change, which people hate, right? You do not have to change. You know, oh, go use the AI and do all your work for you. We have a hard time doing it. So in this case, recognize when the road is fraying, so know when disruption is coming around you, be looking for it. Distinguish the old and the new, so how do I move from where I am to where I'm going? And ultimately bring the bar closer. Believe me, whenever I tell our staff at the food bank, there's a high likelihood that we're going to automate a lot of the work that we do in the warehouse. Does that mean people will lose their jobs? No. They'll be doing a different job. But the idea that we're going to automate that, terrifying on a saving. But we can move more food and help more people if we do it. All right? But I have to bring that vision closer, or otherwise everyone resists me the entire way. So, who can tell me what a D2A strategy is? So there's direct to consumer, B2B, B2B2C. But for those of you that study marketing, who can tell me what this is? Dare to achieve. That's a good one. No. Yeah, tricky. Yeah. So direct to avatar. So this is if you live in the metaverse, how do we actually market to your avatar? I think it's ridiculous, honestly. We're always honest. But people are getting hired because of this big push towards living in a virtual world. This is their job, to market to your second life avatar. It's very fun. New perspectives. Anyone else? Anybody on TikTok? Okay, none of your big spot. Congratulations. So this is not really Tom Cruise. They, with new world from deepfakes, which I do a lot of government contracting in the defense sector. This is pretty scary, right? I can literally mimic your exact voice, face, and make it seem like and look like you are saying anything online, and it is not distinguishable. That's not you, right? So this whole account has millions of followers. This guy actually just superimposes Tom Cruise face onto it, and you really can't tell the difference. It's pretty crazy. The implications of this, right? So we saw one from the government here last year where the CEO's voice had been recorded, and an AI called the CFO of a major company and said, transfer money to this account for us. And from the CFO's perspective, it was the CEO, it was the boss. He's like, are you sure? Yes, absolutely. Had a full conversation. As the CEO with their voice sent the money, and it was an entire fraud, AI, machine learning, did the whole thing. All right, so we crazy stuff there. Drive value for innovation for good. So this is Google X. I was here about a week and a half ago at Google in the Bay. They do a lot of really great work around huge problems, radical solutions, and breakthrough technologies. For me, it's building things that matter. Right. So this is actually a talk I did for Cardi here last year. An interesting way to think about it. So world's first carbon negative spirit to produce and removing carbon in the air. So taking the carbon that's all around us, distilling it actually through the processes to make a vodka out of it. And, there's one vodka. And, making it actually a good technology for the future. Right? So thinking about, we can still be profitable, we can still make money, but how do we think about using science? Here's one for China. This is actually the first breakthrough in fusion. So this artificial sun was on for about 17 minutes last year. Free clean energy. So if you think about the biggest question I get all the time, if you could solve for one big thing, water, food, family, whatever it may be, what would you solve for? Energy does the whole thing. If we can make free, abundant, clean energy for all, basically everything else goes away. And we're making some pretty huge strides. This is the new AI bot from Tesla. Looks super friendly. We got 11 bed at night. Can I help you? It's pretty scary, right? So we're seeing a lot of these things are coming online now, and they are very, very, very powerful. They are building this, and if Tesla has taught us anything, Elon may be a little quirky, But typically what he builds. Right? All of them. So go from there. How about a VR date? Anyone interested in having this? Be your new online dating portal, put the goggles on. Here you've got your sensory and your partner across the world. Here's a bonus here. So Jeff Bezos hired top sign to be that. So that was I mentioned earlier. The billionaire is funneling his money into an anti-aging startup called Alpha Labs. And what I'll call out here is he did hire Jennifer Doudna, who did win the Nobel Peace Prize for CRISPR in 2020. So the all-star team that he has put together to be able to accomplish this is the world experts on the subject. Like they will make huge strides in anti-aging with this technology. So lots and lots of money being poured into it, and typically what we invest in, we build. Right, it's pretty interesting what they do there. How about a mixed reality crypto multi-terrace lounge? And you go to the lounge and then you put on the VR headset and you hang out in a lounge virtually. Some of these make no sense to me, right? But they're being built, right? So you can go ahead and pay for those. Everything's in blockchain, everything's in crypto, and you go to a bar, and then you hang out virtually. I don't know. How about this one? Scientists invent a screen that creates flavors when you lick it. It wants to come up and lick the screen.
Before or after COVID?
This is ridiculous. But, sensory, as we think about mixing digital with the physical world, bringing these experiences closer to what we do, people are building that, right? I know a lot of work going on right now around sensors in the brain where we can trick ourselves into feeling, sensing, tasting, touching just by sensors that are manipulating our brain waves, right? So pretty interesting stuff going on around the world. Okay, could we read this? From the back of the room? Anybody? Oh man, tough. Okay, so this is my synopsis of talk tonight. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I'm going to give you some comments. So, everybody here's a young professional, right? Just started your career? Yeah? Yeah. So, hopefully you've heard this. Develop a growth mindset, so approach your work with a growth mindset and adaptability. Build a strong network for yourself around your industry, relationships, mentors, colleagues, and others. Be proactive, seek opportunities to learn and grow in your field, develop the skills, invest in professional development, and take courses, attending workshops, and so on. Communicate effectively, so develop strong communication skills, both written and verbal, practice active listening, be clear and concise. Maintain a positive attitude, stay positive, enthusiastic about your work, and stay adaptable. So workplace is constantly changing and important to be adapting to new situations and challenges. Does all make sense? OD, right? LD? Yep. Yeah? How do I do with those? I don't know. The AI.
Yeah. I went today about
ChatGPT 4 wrote this as well. So you think about, and you can't read this if you're online, you're seeing it. I've been teaching this for 20 years, UCLA all the way up till now. With one sentence in that tool, I asked it to write best practices to teach young professionals about how to navigate their career in the future. It spit that out in 3 seconds. You didn't write that? No.
It can be wordy, but
Yeah, it's worded. It's there, right? But no, I didn't write one word of that. That is all the AI.
Yeah, I saw that on TV. It's just on TV.
Yeah.
This weekend.
And so to make it a little bit more fun here, I probably shouldn't have done this, but I did it this week. I did it last week. Yep, we can fun. We have obviously a lot of grants that we write in the food bank to give support for the work that we do. And so I have a whole professional grant writing team. And so I was giving a talk to the National Association of Grant Writers about the implications of AI. And it just happened to be the day before we were writing a grant for the USDA and the city or something. And so halfway through the grant, for several of the questions, I just had the AI write my responses for me and snuck it into the response and didn't tell my head of grant writing. And so the next day we were meeting with, again, the president of this big association that she's a member of, and I pulled it up real time in the meeting. And I said, how's this all look? And she was like, you wrote great. It's fine. Like, you write this all the time. I didn't write that. And she's like, are you serious? You just did that to me in front of the whole crowd? I'm like, yeah. It looked like I wrote it. And they are not, you write grants for a living, they are not easy to write.
Yeah.
Talk about job disruption. You know, so for her, as a professional writer, that it can even get close is pretty crazy, right? And so I've got a class I'm taking right now that I asked it this the other day. So I had a midterm review, or the final, and I asked it, tell me about the implications of the convergence between artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and CRISPR-Cas9 on military intelligence from like the national and U.S. perspective. It wrote my entire final. In initiatives. Now, we could change it, kind of, sure. Should I probably turn that in? I think my school would be a little bit aggravated if I did that. It's on YouTube. But it does change the way that we work in the future. And so the implications for that, it used to be we would tell people, if your job is easily like build apart, the AI would automate your job. Robotics will. And we are seeing that, unfortunately. This, like I used to run innovation at Price Waterhouse, one of the biggest auditing firms, consulting firms, and accounting firms in the world. Why would you need to have an auditor go in and read pieces of paper when tools like this can audit every financial transaction instantaneously and have no human error? This will change the world. So, anyway, with that delightful note, that's me. I'm happy to chat.